Wow, I feel like I just got back from a trip to the top of Everest. I went through a pain gateway, a portal of suffering. It was something that was necessary, and I'm seeing how clear I am. And I can actually make this video now because I'm not feeling that charge, that emotional charge. Something has neutralized and healed, and I'm just so relieved. It's taken years. The subject I wanted to share with you today is trauma. Now, what is trauma? I've learned from my own mentor, my own guide, that trauma is the wound. It is the effect of the experience. Trauma is not the hit, trauma is the concussion. So it's what we deal with in the aftermath of an experience. And what I've realized is it's very important that we take responsibility for that wound. A lot of times it's very difficult for us to look into this wound, especially when we're triggered, because when we're triggered, that's basically an opportunity for us to enter this pain gateway. And so when we run from this wound, we go into areas of, self-denial. We go into abusive situations, addictions. We don't know how to handle ourselves. Finally got to this point of being able to dive into the wound, understanding the trauma itself. What happened to me? That's the question we must ask ourselves. We must be honest. So, a lot of you have followed my personal journey, and I've talked a little bit about, the dark triad. I've made jokes a little bit about the serious abuse that went on in my family, and there's this feeling of neutrality that came about from that. I really feel like this unconditional love for my family that has gone beyond everything. But there has been something else on my personal journey that has taken me aback, has put me in a place of trauma like I've never really understood could happen. Now, you think of family and relationships, and yes, it's very common to have dysfunction. But something that I wasn't adept to, something that I didn't understand the right way to approach, was community. I had left my family structure looking for that acceptance, that acknowledgement that I didn't receive. And I went into a community, a spiritual community in, the land that I call formerly known as Sedona. And I found connection. I found people that spoke my star language. I was astonished. I couldn't believe I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. But over the years, as my spiritual journey really went deep and I progressed, and when I say devoted, I'm I mean devoted in the way that I gave up everything for what I believed to be my spiritual path, my highest route to my highest self. And over the years, I disconnected to some of those connections. Some of those happen naturally, others, somewhat more abruptly. But as the last years came about in that community, I realized that something was happening. That I was not only not being seen, and that non-acceptance, that non-recognition, that wound was being continually activated, being continually scratched at and hurt. It's like the mere reflection that I was receiving from some of those people in that community was them telling me that I was nothing. Oh, you want to live in the forest? You're nothing. Oh, you think you're equal because of the color of your skin? You're nothing. Oh, you think you're beautiful because you're a woman? You're nothing. And you think you have power because you're not going to buy into our system? You're nothing. At the same time as I was being continually shut down and, degraded, not being accepted anymore, being ousted, at the same time I was watching specific individuals who had personally attacked me in person. They had become very loved, accepted, validated, hugely widely recognized on a world scale. Their media platforms are now massive. And that right there was enough to traumatize my soul. I got to this point where nothing made sense. The inversion of this matrix had completely kind of duped me. I was just seeing how nobody loved the truth. Nobody loved the light. Everybody was excusing it as nothing. And then on the other hand, building up this facade, these imposters who went out of their way to make sure that I knew I was nothing. And, so I went through the depth of that trauma and the pain, and I still do. I've faced the void, like the very bottom of that pit, and it's scary. But it also told me something else about myself. That in that nothingness, that void, there's something. There's a light. There's a consciousness. There's something looking at me. There's an awakening there. And that's the blessing in the trauma. When we truly have the courage to look at what ails us, what kills us, that's when we start living. When I looked at that pain and I proved to myself, Danielle, you're not only nothing, you're everything. I was able to move on with my life and able now to share this with you. I still endure incredible attacks from these people for following my highest path, my joy, seeking out my truest self. I was attacked for living close to myself. And, I just want to thank my people here, like seriously, my subscribers. You've walked a lot of this journey with me, and you have your own traumas, and we've just sort of held each other spiritually, energetically, and it's just a beautiful, loving, heart-based energy. And like I said in past videos, like, thank you. I don't I don't know what I would have done without that energetic support. It is important to me to have this outlet, regardless of how many people subscribe to it, because this is an outlet for me creatively, but it's also an option for star seeds. It's a gateway for those who are awakening and needing, that guidance, needing to see that light somewhere. Because for me, I walked into false light. I had to evolve past that, and it's okay if, these new generations have to do that themselves, but at least there's this channel. At least there's someone saying, "Hey, don't do what I did. You don't have to take these crazy routes. You can just take this simple road straight forward. You'll get right there." And if someone heeds that advice, then amazing. I did my job. And at the same time, I get this blessing of sharing my creativity and my life, and the beauty, the emotions that are part of it. And what I realized, just kind of tying back into what I was speaking about before, once we have the courage to dive into these wounds, they shift. We become clear, we become lighter. As soon as I started to work on this, I went into my own realm. I've been in it. And I felt that shift. And it was interesting because I ended up meeting this couple. They were on their way down from Oregon. They had just come from a spiritual retreat. Like a famous person, blah, blah, blah. They were talking to me, and within the first 5 minutes, they brought up to me this person, these people who had brought me into this state of trauma. They had their own experience, their own negative experience that they wanted to share with me. And it was so healing. You know why? Because in that moment, I knew that the universe had seen me, that the angels were helping me heal. I had other people share with me on a deep level their own pain that matched mine. And I knew I wasn't alone.